Imagine a scenario filled with depravity and wickedness, where people seek out unnatural relationships, even desiring contact with angels, and daughters end up pregnant by their own father. Today, we're going to explore the story of Lot, a man whose choices placed him at the center of some truly extraordinary events. Get ready to witness the judgment and wrath of God as it culminates in the destruction of an entire civilization. Before we get into today's content, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss any of our latest updates. Lot's story in the Bible begins in the book of Genesis, starting around chapter 11. This biblical figure has a somewhat mysterious background, with uncertainty even around the meaning of his name. Some scholars think his name might represent the idea of a veil or covering, perhaps suggesting the importance of presenting oneself well in the eyes of others. According to the Bible, after his father's death, Lot left the city of Ur in the land of the Chaldeans. He traveled to Haran with his grandfather Terah, his uncle Abraham, and Abraham's wife Sarai. When Abraham departed from Haran after Terah's death, Lot decided to go with him to Canaan. During a severe famine in Canaan, both Lot and Abraham went down to Egypt to survive. However, after a series of events, Pharaoh, angry at being deceived, expelled Abraham and Sarai from Egypt, and Lot returned to Canaan with them. Over time, both Abraham and Lot prospered greatly. Their herds grew so large that the land could no longer support them both, which led to disputes among their shepherds. The contrast between Abraham and Lot becomes clear as the story unfolds, especially in how they handle the opportunities and challenges that come their way. Abraham is portrayed as a man of obedience and deep trust in God's promises, which shapes his entire life. His faith guides his choices, making him a prime example of someone who places God's will above his own earthly interests. Recall the episode of the three mysterious visitors at Mamre. One day, while Abraham was sitting at the entrance of his tent under the oaks of Mamre, he suddenly noticed three men standing nearby. The way the story is told suggests that these visitors had an extraordinary nature, as Abraham quickly bowed down before them in respect. Abraham showed remarkable hospitality in this encounter, inviting them to stay and rest, offering them water to wash their feet and food to refresh themselves. It was during this meeting that Abraham and Sarah received unexpected and transformative news. One of the visitors revealed that within a year, despite Sarah's old age, she would have a child. This divine promise aligned with an earlier one from God, who had assured Abraham that his descendants would be as countless as the stars in the sky. The visit at Mamre not only shows Abraham's exemplary hospitality, but also reveals the close, personal relationship between God and his faithful servant. On the other hand, Lot's choices show him increasingly drawn to the temptations of the material world and the lure of seemingly prosperous opportunities. For this reason, Abraham and Lot eventually decided to go their separate ways. Abraham, in his wisdom and humility, allowed Lot to choose the land he wanted first. By choosing to separate, Abraham hoped to avoid conflicts and preserve harmony, demonstrating his spiritual maturity and his value for peace and unity with God over material disputes. Lot chose the lush plains of the Jordan near the Dead Sea, close to the city of Sodom. He was captivated by the beauty and fertility of the area, making his decision based on material gain rather than spiritual wisdom. While understandable from a human perspective, this choice shows Lot's vulnerability to worldly seductions, standing in stark contrast to Abraham's steadfast faith. After separating from Abraham, Lot settled in Sodom and quickly became involved in the city's affairs, even gaining a prominent social position. However, the Bible describes the people of Sodom as extremely wicked, and their depravity greatly distressed Lot. In the New Testament, the Apostle Peter describes how Lot was tormented day after day by the evil he witnessed around him. While Lot was living in Sodom, a conflict broke out. Kings from Mesopotamia attacked and defeated the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. In this battle, the possessions of Sodom were plundered, and many of its inhabitants, including Lot, were taken captive. When Abraham heard about what had happened, he organized a rescue mission. In a daring nighttime attack, he defeated the enemy army and recovered Lot along with his family and belongings. It was during this episode that Abraham encountered Melchizedek, a mysterious and significant figure in the Bible. Despite the violence and chaos surrounding Sodom, Lot chose to remain in the city. The narrative continues with a visitation of angels to Sodom, a city still steeped in chaos and moral corruption. The divine presence in such a corrupt place underscores God's awareness of human wickedness and his response to cries for justice, as echoed in Jeremiah 23, verse 24. God's intervention in human affairs reflects his commitment to righteousness and his willingness to act when confronted with evil. God reveals his intention to investigate the sins of Sodom, signaling his judgment and rejection of such depravity. However, when faced with the overwhelming wickedness of Sodom, God decides that the city must be destroyed. The biblical account underscores just how far gone the inhabitants of Sodom were, especially in the way they treated the angels. The men of Sodom, in their sinful desires, wanted to have relations with these angelic visitors, a shocking display of immorality that ultimately sealed the city's fate. In the midst of this chaos, Lot tried to calm the situation, but in a desperate and troubling choice, he offered his own daughters to the men of the city. This act reveals the damaging influence that living in Sodom had on Lot's character and judgment. Meanwhile, the Bible shifts back to Abraham, who courageously intercedes with God on behalf of Sodom. Abraham, aware of the impending destruction, questions God, asking if he would spare the city if there were even a few righteous people within it. This bold dialogue reflects the teaching in James 5:16, which says that the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Abraham's negotiation with God continues, as he humbly but persistently asks if the city could be spared for the sake of the righteous. Psalm 86:15 resonates with this scene, proclaiming, "But you, Lord, are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness." This moment highlights God's willingness to listen to the pleas of his servants and his readiness to show compassion. Ultimately, God decides to destroy the cities of the plain, including Sodom and Gomorrah. However, before this destruction, 2 angels are sent to rescue Lot and his family. This deliverance happens because of God's mercy and his covenant with Abraham. When the men of Sodom tried to seize the angels, they were struck with blindness. The angels then urged Lot to gather his family and leave the city immediately. Despite their warnings, Lot hesitated, forcing the angels to physically lead him and his family out of Sodom. During their escape, the angels warned them not to look back, but Lot's wife disobeyed and was turned into a pillar of salt. Her transformation is a dramatic illustration of the consequences of ignoring God's instructions. Though Lot was spared from destruction, he wasn't free from the moral consequences of his choices. His decision to live near Sodom exposed his family to an environment that ultimately harmed them. Lot's story resonates with the struggles that people of faith face today, as they often find themselves surrounded by values that conflict with their beliefs. After leaving Sodom, Lot and his 2 daughters moved to a small town, but fearing for their safety, took refuge in a cave in a mountainous region. This choice to hide away reveals a lingering hesitation to fully trust in God's plan. In a way, the cave symbolizes a retreat not just from danger, but from fully engaging with life. It represents a state of emotional and spiritual isolation, raising questions about how trauma can impact one's ability to live fully. While in this cave, a disturbing event took place. Fearing that their family line would end, Lot's daughters devised a plan to preserve it. Isolated and without hope of finding husbands, they chose a desperate path. On successive nights, they got Lot drunk and driven by a distorted sense of duty, each daughter lay with him to produce offspring. From this incestuous union, 2 sons were born, Moab and Ben-Ammi, the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites, nations that would later become adversaries of Israel. The story of Lot in the Bible continues, highlighting his complex and morally challenging relationship with his daughters after the events in Sodom. But after this point, Lot's life story fades from the biblical narrative, leaving many questions unanswered. It remains unclear whether he ever managed to rebuild his life, or if he spent the rest of his days in isolation in the cave where these tragic events took place. The Bible doesn't provide further details, leaving readers to ponder the ultimate fate of Lot and the lasting impact of his choices. Interestingly, Lot is mentioned in the New Testament, specifically in the Apostle Peter's second epistle, chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. In this passage, Peter reflects on Lot's experiences, noting how he was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless and tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard while living in Sodom. This reference provides insight into Lot's inner struggle, portraying him as a man deeply troubled by the immorality surrounding him, even as he found himself entangled in its environment. This acknowledgement by Peter suggests that despite Lot's mistakes and moral failings, he remained a person of faith at heart, caught in a situation that pained him spiritually. Additionally, Lot's story is also mentioned by Jesus in the Gospel of Luke in an apocalyptic context. Here, Jesus recalls the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the rescue of Lot, using it as a cautionary tale for those living in the end times. He emphasizes the suddenness of Sodom's destruction as a reminder of the importance of readiness and obedience to God's commands. This allusion serves as a powerful warning, underscoring the need for vigilance and spiritual preparation. Jesus' reference to Lot implies that Lot's story holds lasting significance, offering moral lessons that transcend time and serve as reminders for future generations. The biblical account of Lot illustrates a life shaped by choices, some made with faith and others influenced by personal desires or practical considerations. Although Lot had the chance to learn from his uncle Abraham, known as the father of faith, he often made decisions that were driven more by immediate perceptions and worldly desires than by trust in God. Unlike Abraham, who consistently demonstrated faithfulness, Lot's path was marked by decisions that brought him considerable hardship and left deep scars on his family. This contrast between Lot and Abraham serves as a striking example of how choices guided by personal vision rather than divine guidance can lead to unintended consequences and moral compromise. From Lot's story, we can draw valuable lessons that are relevant to contemporary Christian life. The account of Sodom and Gomorrah reminds us of the importance of making ethical choices, even when we are under pressure from societal norms or cultural expectations. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Romans, urges believers not to conform to the pattern of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of their mind. Romans 12, verse 2. This message aligns with Lot's story, emphasizing the need for Christians to stay true to their faith and moral values, even when surrounded by influences that challenge those beliefs. Lot's story is a powerful reminder of how important it is to consider the long-term impact of our decisions, especially when we are confronted with choices that test our faith. It illustrates the dangers of compromising with the world and of allowing material considerations to cloud spiritual judgment. Lot's decision to live near Sodom, though seemingly beneficial in the short term, ultimately exposed his family to an environment that undermined their moral integrity. This serves as a cautionary tale for anyone facing the temptation to prioritize worldly gain over spiritual health. Despite the darkness in Lot's story, there are moments that reveal God's compassion and willingness to extend mercy, even when people make mistakes. The rescue of Lot and his family from Sodom's destruction demonstrates that God's grace can reach even those who are in difficult and morally compromising situations. This aspect of Lot's story reflects a broader theme in the Bible. God's mercy often extends to those who are willing to listen, even if they have stumbled along the way. The story of Lot, with all its complexities and moral challenges, offers hope that regardless of past mistakes, there is always an opportunity for redemption and a call to return to faith. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you've made it this far, 2 similar videos will appear on your screen. Just click to watch and continue exploring these fascinating biblical stories. Thank you for watching, and may God be with you.